Welcome to the Retail Therapy Sessions.
Welcome, Irish.
Hi, sorry I'm late again. It's an annual tradition.
Well, Blametag called it. I'm like, where's Irish at? He goes, did he know there was a time change? And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Blametag probably doesn't remember. I did that my first day.
Nice. All right. So let's talk business. What would y'all like to talk about as far as our retail jobs go? It can be good. It can be bad. I don't care.
I'm up for whatever. And I'm bad at making decisions. So if someone else decides.
Nice. So real quick, how long have you been in retail, Cranky?
Well, all jobs I've had have technically been customer service, but I worked at a women's clothing store for probably 3 or 4 years. And then I was a stay-at-home mom for 5-ish years. And then I've been on and off for the last 6 years. Okay.
And Blametag, how long have you been in total?
Oh, man, since I was old enough to work. So like 25 years, 7-ish in retail, but the rest is all customer service.
Yeah, at this point, any customer-facing job counts. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, so like 25 years then.
Yeah.
Little painful to say.
Including what I'm doing now, 30 plus, 26-ish as a store manager. So, yeah, it's a lot. Irish, you?
21.
21. So, between us, we have what? Roughly 85 plus years of total retail customer service experience amongst us. So that's a frightening thing, actually, if you think about it. So let's talk about, and I'm curious, especially from Irish and Cranky. All right, so inflation is the big buzzword right now, and price is going up. What are you two seeing in your areas as far as price increases on like groceries and things like that? And if you can kind of give a comparison, like how much a certain item was before and it is now.
Well, groceries is the biggest thing that's going up right now. Like, I don't work at a grocery store. It's more of a department store. If I describe it too much, people know where I work. So
don't do that.
I'm going to because there's not that many big box stores in Canada. But groceries, I mean, they keep doing articles and articles and articles about it in the news because it just keeps going up and up and up. And part of that is because we have to import so much, like fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff. Like they grow out, on the BC coast, and we get potatoes from the East Coast. But I mean, like the fruits and all that kind of stuff, we pretty much all have to import. Milk is going up because also we refuse to take milk from any other countries. We've made laws so that it stays within our own country. And that's expensive. Like I think a gallon of 2% is now, I think it's over $5 now. $5.05, $5.17. And it used to be $4.65 in just like a couple months ago. So the dairy prices are skyrocketing. But at the same time, some of that is because we have stricter laws on how we raise our animals here and what we can put in them for hormones and growth stuff. So yeah, that's expensive, especially since we have a 2-year-old who seems to go through a gallon every couple days. But I do a lot of the price changes at work, and yeah, Corp is upping the prices. I was doing some because we do in-store pricing and stuff. We can do that because we're a type of franchise. And I've been going through and changing some because the cost has been going up. What was I looking at the other day? And in the past 2 years, it went up probably $30 since we were buying it in 2020. The actual cost of what the owner paid. And that's just general things like tools and some of the treadmills and stuff went up $200 or $300 a piece. So like the businesses are seeing a bit of a price increase, but I don't know that it's as much to justify what they're pricing things at the moment. So like I can still make 30 or 40 points, even putting something on sale for $200 or $300 less than the Corp price. So.
Wow. Irish, what you got going on over there?
The biggest one at the moment is fuel. So, petroleum-based products, basically. So gas in your tank, heating your home, that's nearly doubled. So it's a little over $7 American per gallon for a gas tank. So there's that, and obviously that has a knock-on effect for everything, because everything gets delivered to a store. So gradually prices are going to start to increase because of that. In groceries, there's been nothing dramatic just yet, but it's going to creep in over the next month or two. And as well as that, we have another shock to the system, because we're about to take in perhaps close to 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. So as a proportion of our population, that's about 2%. So that's the same as like you guys taking in 6 million people. So that's going to put pressure on every service that we have. We are already in a bit of a crisis when it comes to housing as it is. So it's going to have a knock-on effect on everything, So inflation across the board.
Blametag, what you seeing down south?
Maybe he's on mute, is he?
Yes, having trouble with my mute.
There he is.
Yeah, I know like my store in particular has been like 25 to 30% on all products.
Increase,
yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I can tell you in my neck of the woods, since I work grocery, the prices are going up. But the biggest thing that we've had going on for so long is when the pandemic hit, in the United States, COVID ran through like the chicken plants, basically. Mm. And, one of the hardest things to keep in stock and get is chicken. We get most of our chicken from Tyson. And so we've had a shortage of that. Now, as far as milk prices, we're competitive. Our managers go out and check like Walmart and stuff like that. And like some of your staples, they make sure no matter for what the profit margins that they're lower than Walmart. But I hear employees talking about how the prices have went up. I just really, for the stuff that I purchased, I just really haven't seen it being as bad as some people are making it out to be. And, and I'm hearing complaints mostly from older folks. And obviously, when you get people here in the States who are, relying on like Social Security and stuff like that, every dollar counts. So they're going to be the ones that are really, really cognizant to whether it goes up 5 cents or whatnot. But, most of the complaints seem to be coming from like brand name merchandise. And that's where I kind of feel like, and I am in some instances where we're all a little bougie and we won't buy like the store brand. But a lot of the store brand stuff that we sell is made by major manufacturers anyway. And what really is going to be the difference between like a store brand Rice Krispie and like Rice Krispies? It's puffed rice. It's not like, that big a deal. But, there's a lot of obviously, differences in like mac and cheese and stuff like that. But I'm hearing a lot of complaints, but, I've got, Cranky, you were talking about going through milk. I've got a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they act like they don't ever get to eat. So, we're buying food constantly for those two, and it's not really any more expensive than, maybe there's an extra $5 to $10 on the total order, but nothing as rage-inducing as people are making it out to be. Now, gas is going up everywhere. Ours
gas
here
is bad here too.
Yeah, ours here is like, I think it's like 4. We just crossed over 4. Whereas on the West Coast, it's like damn near $8 an hour.
Yeah, so, we're at like 4 here.
Yeah. What about your groceries down there, Blametag? Are you seeing any big difference there?
No, I was going to specify that. Yeah, I kind of sell, I guess you call them consumer goods. I work in the cookware section of a store. So it's not really anything essential. So, groceries, I don't think have been that bad.
Yeah, I just don't, every now and then you'll see blurbs, come through. I know that, the federal government are investigating businesses and they're wanting proof that the prices going up are because of the supply chain issues. I don't know if we'll ever see a conclusion of that, but when you start looking at companies that are raising prices and you start looking at their profitability, it's like, what are y'all doing? I mean, and I get caught, supply and demand and all that other stuff, but I still have a hard time being like, what's the difference between a tree now and a tree 30 years ago? Wood still wood, it's like, there hasn't been some great innovation in like chickens laying eggs. I mean, why did it cost the same way back then, or way less, and now it's so much more when nothing's really changed other than profit margins?
Well, I think with the wood, at least for the U.S., I know there was a whole thing with Trump and our government, because we send a lot of softwood down to the U.S., and there was a big fight between them, I guess, about it. There was some tariffs and sanctions and whatnot. So it ended up throwing your guys' prices way up because we quit supplying as much. So that's just what it ended up like. Some of that stuff is, I think, because the governments are starting to fight each other over what people owe. Because even the milk thing, like people were upset because they didn't want to let us start bringing in stuff from the U.S. But like I said, that's partly because we have stricter laws on some of our food consumption and whatnot, and things that are different allowed. And we just didn't want to let that stuff come up to us. Plus, we wanted to make sure that our dairy farmers were still supported, rather than, well, we get all this cheap stuff from the States and then it ends up pushing out our economy, which is what happened with the gasoline. Because we have oil reserves up the wazoo in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and they just decided to, in the 80s, I think, 70s, must have been the 70s, because it was Trudeau Sr. who was like, oh, we'll pay world prices and we'll import it from other places, instead of, that virtue signaling of like, we don't want pipelines and all that stuff to mess up our country. We won't dig for it ourselves because we want it to look clean and pretty, but we'll import it from other places where we don't have to see the damage it might do to the environment. So our gas prices jump, even though we have enough to supply our own country, just because we've decided to trade on the world stage or whatever.
I know there's a lot of arguments about, isolationism, but it's, you got to wonder, at what point do countries start becoming or trying to become self-reliant? And, in the aspect of like, modern staples, I mean, you're looking at all the mess that's going on in Ukraine, and Russia being the largest exporter of wheat. There's been fantastic advances in like, raising food and things like that, whether, it's basically large, what are those things called? I've done lost a word. But, there's ways to do it in-house. And the one thing that I've noticed is like, there's like, especially here in the States, Blametag, I think you would probably agree, there's seemingly an upcharge for anything that's manufactured here. Just it's like an upcharge just to say that it's American made. And, I like to use my time at Guitar Center to kind of give good examples of this, because you have, basically import guitars and you have American made guitars. And you have these come across, all the time. And you get to a point where you're seeing an American guitar that, is quote unquote, hand built. You don't see any kind of increase in quality over the ones that are coming from overseas that are made with machines. And you're paying anywhere from, sometimes 50% more just because it says made in USA, but the quality's not there. Who's buzzing in and out? Is that you, Blametag?
I mean, I've been having some issues with my Skype. I don't know. Was it making a noise?
Well, yeah, it was going like, but it might be just like noise filter on a microphone or something. So well, let's talk a little bit about the tweet about management. I know you saw it, Cranky. Talking about
which one?
The one where, upon my reflection of being out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that one, Irish, but let's talk a little bit about how we're trained as managers to be or supervisors, key carriers, how to be punitive instead of like uplifting and treating people good and, developing them, because the whole kind of theme of the thread was the fact that you're taught, at least I was, as you're coming up as a manager, there's not really an emphasis on people building or team building. Everything you're really kind of taught is supposed to be punitive to get quote unquote bad people out the door. And, we're taught about paper trails. We're taught about, PIPs. We're taught about, performance evaluations and how to use them in a negative way to get rid of people. Even still today with the labor market as it is, that's still going on. So anything you guys got that you've done or seen that kind of lends credence to that, or your own experiences, fire away.
I mean, 100% of what I learned as a manager working for the theater companies, it was geared towards, like you said, punishing people, pushing the people you don't want out the door. I remember the manager who was like one step above me, kind of my direct supervisor would, I was in charge of doing the employee schedule. And he would always say is like, the employee schedule is where you can hurt the people that we don't want. And you can use that to kind of push them into the shifts that they don't want to get them to leave voluntarily. And I always thought that was fucked up, like that you're going to use someone's schedule to basically hurt them because you don't like them.
Yep.
Yeah. And really, no one was that bad or you had to push them out the door like that. It was all personal almost 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
I was told just give them one shift a week or one shift every couple weeks. But I'll also say the few people that we ever actually used that for were really they just wander around. Because, there are still bad employees, people who just don't really do anything. I had to tell a 40-year-old man to get off his phone the other day and go put it in his locker. And, there's a big sign coming down the stairs. And he's hiding back there while the other guy's doing all the work. Come on, dude. But even then, I don't usually write people up for the first offense. I tell you, and if you do it again, I know technically and so it should be, but whatever. And I can't even stand this guy. He's kind of creepy, to be honest. But, I'm not going to write you up the first time I catch it. Second time, we're going to have a talk and, there's probably going to be a verbal warning or whatever. But yeah, I don't like pushing people out because you want people to work for you, right? You want them to come to work and to enjoy it, because the more they enjoy coming to work, the better they work in general. Obviously, again, you have those people who just kind of want to show up and hold up a wall for a paycheck. And unfortunately, we've had a few of those that we had hired for our warehouse, and it's just what are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what it's like there, but at least where we are here, you have a 3-month probationary period, and that's just law. And they can leave without notice, and we can fire them, and we don't have to tell them why within that 3 months. So usually it gives you a good time to feel out if this person is going to be a good worker or not, or if they're always calling in or whatever. It gives you an easy without having to go into it and explain it. But once you're past that, that's where you have to have either it has to be something egregious or, just you have to have 3. It's like a 3 strikes and you're out type system. And I always hated doing the write-ups and stuff. And that was what my first GM, the guy who mentored me, and him and I still chat a lot when I need help or support or ideas for something. And that was kind of his thing too. Let's not write people up. Let's try and work with them and coach them and see. And then eventually when it gets to a point where we have been putting the work in, because a lot of, you guys all work retail, half the time you're just thrown in there and you get either your e-training from online or, 10 minutes with someone to show you what you're doing, and then you figure it out on your own. When we're saying someone's a bad worker, is that actually a failure on their part, or is that a failure on our part because we didn't show them how to do anything properly? Sure, you can get frustrated with them for not knowing what they're doing, but you've worked there for 6 years. They've worked there for 3 weeks. Whose failure is that? That kind of thing. And that's my philosophy, and that was my mentor's philosophy. And then last year when ownership changed, they got a new general manager, and his was write everybody up, tear everybody down so they quit. Actually, the whole Justice for Evan thing, I've struggled to watch some because it hit a little too close to home, because I did end up driving someone to the hospital because they came up at work and they said that they were gonna do something. Sorry. Like just sitting with him. Yeah. Just sitting with him in there was just really hard. And I went to work the next day and I left about 4 hours in, and like the GM was like, "Oh, well, why?" I was like, because I didn't sleep last night, because all I could think of was, what if he didn't come tell me? And I walked out and I found him because he was going to do it in the workplace because it was an overnight shift. And I was leaving late.
And see, that kind of goes along with one of the reasons I enjoy your takes on things is because, the comment you made about who's really the failure here. That's important, because if you're not giving them all the tools to succeed, you can blame them all you want, but it's still your fault, And the whole thing, like with the Justice for Evan stuff, is I've got people, we all do, in our lives that, come from the kind of cloth that's cut, just toughen up, deal with it. It's not that big a deal, blah, blah, blah. But everybody's built different. And when you're in these management situations and you're like, my DMs will be like, you need to get rid of this person, they're terrible or whatnot. You don't know what these people's lives are. You don't know what's going on the outside. Maybe they're not the greatest employee. And it's kind of like I commented, find what your people are good at and let them be good at it. Because I don't think the business, takes enough care in saying, okay, you've got this person, they're working in the warehouse and they suck at it. Let's get rid of them. Well, let's try them somewhere else and see if they can do something and they can be happy with it. And where the business is too quick to be like, get out, write them up, get them out. And you don't know what kind of mental anguish that's putting them through. I cruise Reddit, a lot, looking at like work reform and anti-work and all those stuff. And I posted the link this morning. You got another person from Kroger, talking about their mental health and trying to quote unquote self-harm to get through it. And there's Kroger again. I mean, it's a toxic culture, that these are people are fragile. I mean, and we're in an extremely fragile time frame right now. And I just don't understand why, looking back on everything I've done, why there was such an emphasis on paper trail somebody out the door. You've already invested all this time to get them, and you're 100% correct. There are employees that just suck. I mean, we know that. There's lazy people that are there just to collect a paycheck. And yeah, those need to go. But there's a lot of people that might be on the fence. Maybe they feel like they haven't been properly trained. Maybe they feel out of place. Maybe they took a job just because they needed the job, but they're in the wrong department or the wrong position. That, my DMs be like, oh, that person sucks. Route them up, get them out the door. Like you said, cut the schedule. Give them 1 day a week, 5 hours. That'll teach them. Well, if they were getting 15 hours a week or 30 hours a week or whatnot, they needed that money, obviously. And now, not only are you being just punitive, you're taking money out of their pocket. You don't know what they need that money for. Maybe they got kids at home. It's just awful. Irish, you got anything on that?
Yeah, just to say that I've never known a situation where that worked. This thing of like teaching them a lesson by cutting hours or using the stick and not the carrot. I've never known that to turn an employee into a better employee. Over here, it's very similar, legally speaking, to Cranky. We also have a 3-month probationary period where basically you can be let go because we don't like your haircut. But after that, their kind of employment rights kind of kick in, and it can be quite difficult. So most of the terminations would happen within the first 3 months here. But it's a very, very old school mentality. Over here, the companies that kind of use that punitively would be, it's usually based on internal kind of relationships and company loyalty. Who the favorites are and who the manager likes over somebody else. If you're not in a little niche, kind of a clique or a group, you might be at the receiving end of your hours being cut. But I've never known it to work. I have in the past, a bit like yourselves. I've been told you got to, get rid of this person or cut hours, and sometimes your hands are tied because it could be a very senior person telling you to do it, and you just gotta fucking figure out a way. But most of the time, I really value the team, and I know that if I can and it's more often than not when I changed it could be their department or maybe their schedule, or whatever, they kind of turn around, and it ends up, you get a lot more out of them. Whereas if I was to just write them up for every time that they, looked at their watch more than once in an hour, it just turns them against you, and they become, they will undermine you at every opportunity. So in my opinion, it's an old school mentality. It belongs buried in history. I think there's much better ways of getting things out of people, including being empathetic.
Yes. I used to have a manager that I worked with at Guitar Center. His favorite quote was "No man left behind." And what he meant by that was, kind of like what we're talking about. Maybe he was a terrible salesperson. Okay. Let's put him in operations, put him in the warehouse, see if he likes that. Well, didn't work out there. Okay, let's try them, running the front door, checking serial numbers. Exhaust all options before you get rid of somebody, because they can be of use to you somewhere. You're failing as a manager at that point if you're not at least trying. We know there's a cost attached to bringing these people in. So, try to work it out. I mean, some people come into these jobs, they don't come into these jobs trying to suck. I mean, yes, there are some that don't want to work. I get that. But, I don't think anybody legitimately takes a job, agrees to a crappy schedule and whatnot to do poorly. And, I think that I'll never forget when I started turning the corner into being not one of the cool kids anymore, was going into a store and I'll talk about this when we do the Fixer episode, but taking over a store that had been in the floor forever and whatnot, and being told, first order of business, I want you to get rid of the entire staff.
This has been the Retail Therapy Sessions. Make sure to check out the Retail Warzone podcast as well, and if you like what we do, please leave a review and share with your friends. Thanks for listening.